In this segment, I'd like to talk about if you decide to file Chapter 7, what's included and what's not included. Let's start with the general proposition that when you file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you list all of your debts. Everybody's included. All of your debts are going to get notice of the Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing. The question becomes, what actually happens to that debt, and are certain debts excluded? So I think the first thing we should talk about is the exclusions. And there are really some principal exclusions that keep certain debts out of bankruptcy realm. For example, student loans. Ordinarily, unless there's a special circumstance, are excluded, which means that you would probably continue making payments on them after the bankruptcy is completed. Child support, criminal fines and restitution. Some things that can be excluded sometimes can be if you've incurred debt very recent to your bankruptcy filing. And if you've incurred a significant amount of debt, for example, the purchase of a vehicle on a credit card, or a vacation on a credit card, within a significantly short period of time of filing bankruptcy, the creditor can ask that they actually be paid back that debt. Now, that only applies to that one creditor and not all of your creditors, but that does fall under the exclusion portion of it. What's included? Any debt in which you signed a note can be canceled through the bankruptcy process, accepting those exclusions. So, for example, let's say we filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy for an individual, and 3 years later they ended up losing their home to foreclosure. Well, that note that they signed was actually canceled through the bankruptcy process, and the bank can never come back and ask them for money on that. Or, for example, they have a motor vehicle, and they end up surrendering the motor vehicle back to the registry, or back to the dealership. That note is canceled. Now let me back up a bit, because this doesn't mean that you don't get to keep your house or keep your cars. Because your house and cars are secured, meaning there's a mortgage or a title lien, because they're secured by another part of this obligation, so there's the note and the security, as long as the obligation is paid on a monthly basis and you keep up with your obligations, whatever they may be, you keep the asset. So you pay to play. If you want to keep your home, you continue to make payments on your home. If you want to keep your car, you continue to make payments on your car. Now, some debts fall in a middle category, where sometimes they're excluded and sometimes they're not excluded. And the general rule of thumb, for example, income taxes. Income taxes that are incurred within the last 3 years generally have to be paid on. If they're older than 3 years, so older than 3 years, you filed them more than 3 years ago, you don't have to pay on them because they fall into a different category. So understanding the difference in how certain debts are treated is very important. And it's a very important reason why, when you're contemplating bankruptcy, you really need to understand and seek help from someone who understands the differences and nuances of this type of debt.